Hi, welcome back to Star Media. This is Heather Johnson, and I'm here today with Joy Woelfel. This is part of our Suicide Prevention Awareness Series. Joy is a mental health advocate and suicide awareness and prevention advocate, and she's going to share a little bit about her journey and her story with us today. So, welcome, Joy.
Thank you. Glad to be here and share a little insight.
Yes, we're happy to have you here. So, you want to share just a little bit about your background with us?
I am a suicide loss survivor. My son took his life in 2021 by suicide. We had been struggling with COVID, as most of the world. Uh, it was some constant battles throughout his life, but he was 22 years old and an adult. His last 6 months were very much a struggle. We were in and out of mental health hospitals, crisis units, the criminal justice system. He had a breakup with his fiance, and things did not go well, and his mental health spiraled. And that was at about Christmas time of 2020. And by middle of June 2021, he lost his battle with mental health. I was already struggling with my own mental health, although I didn't know what it was. I am a retired Minnesota State Trooper. I have seen a few things through my career that are pretty horrendous and hard to deal with. I thought after 28 years I was dealing with them well, but I wasn't. When my son died, my life imploded and my mental health took an incredible dive. Kind of an overachiever. I tell people I now have two mental health professionals that I talk to, one for PTSD and one for grief and surviving life struggles and changes that come at me. I'm part of two groups that I'd never wanted to be part of. I am a suicide loss survivor, learning how to live life without my son. I don't claim for it to get easier. I just claim for the normal to be more accepted in my life. I miss him every day still. I do have another son, and we are very close. We work hard together to openly talk about mental health. My son Tyler's battle was something he was ashamed of. Since his death, we talk openly about it, and by doing that, have made differences in our life and in others' lives. My son went off to college 2 months after his brother died, and we wear a bracelet, the symbols for his brother and my son. And his college friends didn't know anything about this story. One night they talked about it, just in general, planted a seed. And a year and a half later, one of those same friends was struggling with mental health, excuse me, and reached out to my son when he needed help. And my son is no expert, but he was able to talk his friend through a bad situation. And to this day, they're still friends. They check in on each other. They do things together. Accepting people for who they are is really something that's important in mental health. It's something to say that you have a heart disease or a lung disease, but to say that you have mental health struggles, people shun you, or people don't, they think perhaps poorly of you, when in fact we all have a brain. It's an organ. It can fail just like a liver or a kidney. Similar to diabetes, you have to maintain it forever. Maybe it's something that gets better, like heart disease, and medications can help it. But if not, there's people out there that you can talk to. For me, my grieving was immense. I know if me wanting my son to still be here was enough, that he would still be here. However, my son had to want to get better, and he couldn't see that. It only was a split second. And my mission from here on out is to remind people that we don't we don't have to judge those split second bad decisions. We just have to remind them that the good ones are still out there and they're still to come. It's just easier to remember the bad because they seem so horrific.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure that was a very difficult journey for you. You really touched briefly on your grief that you went through. We had talked the other day on the phone leading up to this interview about how people grieve differently and how you really can't judge someone's grief, because everybody grieves differently. You might be very outwardly emotional, or you might be very, you seem like you're okay, and on the inside and away from people it might be different. So what can you share a little bit about grief journeys?
The grief process is so very different. My son, who's still here, grieves very differently than I do. My son's father grieved very differently than I do. His aunts and uncles, cousins. But what it comes down to is giving yourself and those grieving grace to do it the way they need to. You don't want to get stuck in this grieving process, but it doesn't mean that on 6 weeks you feel better. Doesn't mean that in 2 weeks you feel better. It might mean that every Tuesday is a bad day for a long time. And sometimes you don't realize why Tuesday's a bad day, but it relates to the grieving process subconsciously. For myself, my son didn't get married. He didn't have children. So some things that have been really hard for me was to see classmates of his get married. I've been to 3 weddings this summer. I wanted to go to them. I was happy for the bride and groom. They are people that mean a lot to me and my son. I left all 3 of them in tears because it's sad. It's a happy day for them. But for me, it was a reality that, again, I'm not going to get to do that with my son. But I went there. I did my part. I did what I could do. I didn't make a scene. I didn't want to make anyone else's day not be fun. And I'm okay with tears in public. I understand I want to get out of there so that I don't bring down this celebration for others. And I get frustrated that it's the reality of my life. But I try to remember that I'm making a difference talking about Tyler and his struggles and his amazing heart and aptitude to want to be good to other people. That's how I'm going to keep my son's light alive. Even though he's not here, I talk about him all the time. I talk about his little brother all the time too. They both mean the world to me. One is the most important human on the planet, and the other is the most important human in heaven. Yeah, equally important.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, and I'm sure it's been a struggle over the years. And, like you mentioned, all those things that you wish that you would be experiencing with your son and aren't. The thing that gets me is, like with your other son and with his college friends and stuff, you never know when what you're saying or what you're doing is going to impact others. So, talking openly and being open with others about feelings and emotions and everything that you're going through is really important, because in your son's situation, when he was at college with his friends, he was that person for someone to reach out to. And so you just never know when you're going to be that person. So I think it's really important for all of us to remember that, we can be that person for somebody when they're going through a difficult time.
And you can be. We don't have to be an expert. Truly giving validation to someone's feelings, because you can't have wrong feelings. You don't have the wrong opinion. It may not be the same as mine, and I may not have that same feeling as you, but it doesn't mean that yours aren't right. And I just try to remind people that that's a valid feeling. How could we make it a different feeling? How can we move forward? Um, Not saying that we shouldn't have those feelings, but since it's not normally a good feeling, let's find a way. And for me personally, it has been, I know I told you last week, I helped organize the Out of the Darkness walk in the Wilmer area. I talk openly about mental health and my struggle. I lost my career to PTSD. I wanted to retire as a Minnesota State Trooper, and I didn't get to. I had to leave. Been a struggle for 4 years, 4.5 years of accepting that I didn't get to leave on my terms. However, I am now seeing, openly speaking about it, the number of people from my community who will reach out to me when they're not having a good day. I am not solving their problem. I can't. I understand that. But we all just want to feel supported and want better good for others. So kind of like my shirt, I literally believe we can be better humans.
Exactly.
I don't care which side of which debate you're on. I don't care your religious affiliation or non-affiliation. I just want what's best for you. For me, when my son passed away, there were some things that people said, and I know now that it was just because it was they didn't know what to say. But for me personally, one of the things that just bothered me is two statements that people made to me that said God didn't give me more than I could handle, and I screamed BS because I can't handle it. I couldn't handle it, and that my son's in a better place, because that's not true. He's in a different place. But that would imply that his place on earth with me was not a good place. And it's where it was. He knew I would love him forever. We were battling through this mental health. He was struggling to figure out why he was the way he was. And and even in that struggle, our family, we all had different days where we were supporting him, so Tyler, better than others, because it was a lot to deal with. And one day I was frustrated and his dad took over. And one day I was frustrated, dad was frustrated, and his brother took over. So it's hard not to look at it for me as a failure. But again, I was doing what I could, and I've come to accept that. I don't like his choice. And he's aware. I wish he was still here. For me, in my battle, and Tyler's battle with mental health and mine, accepting help is huge. Your friends are there and they really do want to help you. And so be honest with them. Be open. Right. It's okay to set boundaries for yourself and for them.
Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking is about how, people, when you're going through a loss like you went through and people don't really know what to say, just being there for somebody just like you would for any type of death is important. Not treating it differently, just
absolutely,
being there for you as a mom who lost her son, whether it was suicide or not. You lost your child, and that's something that people, can just show compassion for. So
correct. And it's really hard to have to say how your child dies. So be really cautious if you know someone whose child died by suicide, because the means does not matter. Right. Every day in front of the day that Tyler died is what matters in Tyler's life.
Right. Yes. Well, I certainly appreciate you sharing your story with us. It's an emotional one. It's hard for us on the outside to completely understand what you're going through. I think probably, unfortunately, most people have been touched by someone who has died from suicide. And, but a lot of us aren't, the close ones, we're looking in from the outside, and it's just an unimaginable thing. And so I think by creating these videos and this awareness, I hope that we are providing people with some thoughts to get them thinking about how they can help those around them, how they can just maybe be more of a listening ear. Mental health should not come with a stigma. I mean, we want to, like you mentioned, treat it just like, your brain is any other body part. And if it's failing and needs help, it needs help. So we want to make sure that the people out there that need that help are getting that help. And we just thank you so much, Joy, for joining us today. And I appreciate you sharing your story, and we wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking about mental health. We can get through it together.
Yes, we can. Thank you.